My goodness, was this team just the Cinderella of Cinderellas last year? The TCU Horned Frogs took it all the way from a Big 12 championship game appearance. Sadly, they ended up losing to a semifinal win to a national championship appearance. Granted, they did get blundered by the eventual national champion Georgia Bulldogs, but this TCU team has a lot to build off of from year one under Sonny Dykes. However, there is growing concern that this team will not be as good as they were in 2023. So can TCU prove that the slipper still fits and walk their way to another national championship game? Or is this TCU team going to be taking some steps back and maybe a little bit of a reality check under Sonny Dykes in year two? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome to my channel. I'm predicting all 133 FBS level college football teams this summer, which means I'm doing your favorite teams. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that team gets uploaded. But there are more ways than that. You can always support my channel. You're doing one right now by watching the video. You can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, and anything else you are willing and able to do to help me support the name of this channel. The TCU Horned Frogs, the Cinderella from last year, will they be a Cinderella again in 2023? You're about to find out. Hey, what do preview predictions look like this year? Glad you asked. We're going to go through a roster overview, take a look at who the team lost, who's coming back, and who's coming in through the transfer portal and recruiting class, as well as taking a look at the 2023 Horned Frog football schedule and giving it a game-by-game preview and prediction. So without further ado, let's talk about the TCU Horned Frogs in 2023. The quarterback room going to look different this year as world-class player from last season and Max Duggan does leave. 3,698 yards, 32 touchdowns, 8 interceptions on around 63.5% completion percentage last year. He was phenomenal and will be deeply missed by this TCU team. He was also their third leading rusher with 423 yards and 9 rushing touchdowns last season. And you'll also lose Sam Jackson out of that quarterback room as well. Chandler Morris, I believe, is going to be that starter this year. I don't really see anyone being close to competition. But Chandler Morris, I do believe, was that day one starter last year. Max Duggan ended up taking over and did unworldly things. But Chandler Morris, small sample size from last year, did have 66% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, and 145 yards. I think he'll be a solid quarterback for TCU entering 2023, but his skill position groupings are also going to be looking a lot different than they were last year, as the top 2 leading rushers from this team last year, and Kendra Miller, who had 1,399 yards and 17 touchdowns, and Amari DiMercato, who had 681 yards and 6 touchdowns, are both gone off of this team from last year. You do return Imani Bailey, who had 250 yards and 2 touchdowns last season, was the only other player over 100 yards from TCU last season, as well as getting a transfer coming over from the University of Alabama, former 5-star coming out of high school, as most players from Alabama are. But Trey Sanders, the 3-star rated transfer coming over, should be good for this Horned Frogs team. And it's also a wide receiver grouping that is going over a lot of overhaul and losing a lot of very talented players. Quentin Johnson, most notably of the bunch, had 1,069 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. Tay Barber was the second leading receiver, 613 yards, 5 touchdowns. Darius Davis, 531 yards, 5 touchdowns. And then Jordan Hudson are all gone off of this wide receiver grouping. Savion Williams does come back, was the team's 4th leading receiver last year. 392 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. But a lot of transfers come in. JoJo Earl comes over by way of Alabama. John Paul Richardson comes over by way of Oklahoma State. And Jalen Robinson, a speedy option formerly of UCF and most recently Ole Miss, will be coming over to give this TCU team some nice speed in the wide receiver position grouping. In the tight end room, you do lose Georquarius Spivey, but Jared Wiley will come back to help be that feature tight end for the Horned Frogs in 2023. 245 yards and 4 touchdowns for him last season. Now, talking about this offensive line, it's a pretty talented offensive line last year. It's got to replace Steve Avila and Alan Ali. However, you get a transfer coming over from Alabama, another former 5-star coming out of high school in Tommy Brockermeyer, and you're going to return Andrew Coker, Brandon Coleman, and John Lands to this offensive line as well. Now, defensively, this was the team that really stepped up when it needed to and made the big plays, and it's going to lose a lot of nice talent off of it from last season. As Dylan Horton is going to be gone. 48 tackles, 10 sacks last season. He was your sack leader last year. He'll be deeply missed, as well as Terrell Cooper, 22 tackles and a sack and a half for him last season. When you take a look at who's coming back to this defensive line, they were all around the same levels of production last year, but Caleb Fox, Dominic Williams, and Tymon Mitchell will all be coming back to this defensive line. Mitchell with 3 sacks, Fox didn't have any, and Williams with a sack and a half last season. In the linebacking group, you do lose a guy that was phenomenal in this linebacker unit last year in D. Winters. 7.5 sacks, was second on the team. He is gone. 79 tackles, was fourth on the team. Did have a pick six, couple passes defended last year as well. Now, Johnny Hodges and Jamoy Hodge. Yes, it's easy to get those two names mixed up, but Johnny Hodges was your leading tackler. 87 tackles, 2 sacks last year. Jamoy Hodge, 82 tackles, was your third leading tackler. 4.5 sacks and an interception for him last year, as well as Shadrack Banks will be coming back to this linebacking unit. In the defensive back grouping, you lose a very talented defensive back player in Travius Hodges Tomlinson. 50 tackles, 15 passes defended, and 3 interceptions for the team last season. When you take a look at who comes back, Mark Perry, Millard Bradford, Bud Clark, who led the team with 5 interceptions last season, Abraham Kamara, and Josh Newton, a very, very good corner for this team. 12 pass defended, 3 interceptions, and a pick 6 for him last season. And some transfers come in to bolster the secondary, and Avery Helm and Channing Canada coming over here as well. Avery Helm is coming over by way of Florida. And then Channing Canada comes over, I believe, by way of community college. Yeah, Trinity Valley Community College in Athens, Texas. 4th overall rated player coming out of community college, according to 24/7 Sports. So they do lose a lot of key contributors, but offensively, defensively, I still think this is going to be a very solid team in 2023, with your head coach being Sonny Dykes, offensive coordinator is Kendall Brights, and your defensive coordinator is Joe Gillespie. As we take a look at the Horned Frogs 2023 football schedule. Hey, if you don't know how this works, let me tell you, let me break it down. Home games are going to be underlined, and any game on the road will be in italics or the slanted text. Any game in green is a game I have TCU being able to win easily. Any game in yellow is, whoa, the other team's going to put up a fight, but I think TCU will be able to win, and red is a loss. So starting out week 1, TCU, this is not necessarily an easy game with the Colorado Buffaloes on schedule. Boulder is hanging from the rafters right now as Colorado and Deion Sanders have flipped upside down. And that's a team bringing in a lot of transfers that is losing a lot of pieces, basically an entirely new roster there. And I think Deion's going to start winning very, very fast. Do not be surprised if it is this year. I do not think it will be this year. I do think TCU definitely is the team that's already been under their head coach's system. Colorado may be overall the more talented team, but when you take a look at TCU at home, I think they're going to be able to win this game right here. I think Colorado, Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, a lot of talented transfers, make that game close, but that's going to be a game ultimately that I think TCU is going to wind up winning, and then they will beat their FCS opponent in week 2. Then when you take a look at Houston here, week 3, I think it's going to be a struggle for the Houston Cougars this year. When you take a look at that team, it is a Houston team that loses Clayton Tune, it loses Nathaniel Dell, it loses Alton McCaskill. That's a name you forgot about. Hey, he in fact actually went over to Colorado, and then there are a lot of talented players off that defense gone as well. I think it's going to be a struggling year for Houston and Dana Holgorsen in their first year in the Big 12 Conference. On the road, maybe they put up a little bit of a fight here, which is what I'm predicting, but I think TCU going to be able to win that game. I also do think they're going to be able to beat SMU. Now, SMU is not going to be any pushover for anybody this year. I think Oklahoma will find that out as well. But SMU has got some really, really good pieces. I still think that's a pretty talented team, and the battle for the Iron Skillet can get hot and heated. I think TCU walks away with it, starts out 4-0, but man, have they already had some tests already. And then West Virginia is up here. I think this will be an easy win for TCU. West Virginia is a team that I'm just not confident on entering 2023. They've been disappointing for the past couple of years, and I don't necessarily blame the talent. I do not think Neil Brown is the right guy for that job. Again, he has a lot to prove this year. West Virginia's got some solid pieces. We'll see if they can make them count. But I don't have faith in the Mountaineers this year. I believe that TCU will be able to win that game. And then you got to go on the road and play Iowa State. And this is where I think TCU starts running into trouble. This Iowa State game There are a lot of very, very talented teams on the schedule, and I think TCU is going to start dropping games, and I think they drop one right there to the Iowa State Cyclones. Iowa State is a very, very talented team offensively, even though they do lose Xavier Hutchinson, among some other names in that wide receiver room. Hunter Deckers is back at quarterback. Jarrell Brock is back at running back. And there are a lot of key contributors gone off that defense. But I think the Cyclones have what it takes not only to get to a bowl game, but more importantly for this argument, to hang with TCU. And I think Iowa State's going to pull off some wins this year that maybe a lot of people are going to count them out of. I think this is one of them here. I think the Cyclones are going to pull off a little upset of the TCU Horned Frogs. And TCU gets their first loss of 2023. And it doesn't get easier because you move on and you play BYU. Now, it's a game I do think TCU wins, but Keaton Slovis is at quarterback. There's a lot of very talented players offensively and defensively for Kalani Sitake. BYU will be no pushover in the Big 12 this year. Definitely can fight for a spot in a bowl game. If not, hey, it's the Big 12. Who knows? Maybe even a Big 12 championship game appearance in their first season back in a conference after being an FBS independent. But I think TCU will be able to win that game. Now this game here against Kansas State, very, very interesting game. Kansas State loses a lot of pieces as well. Adrian Martinez, although Will Howard does come back. Deuce Vaughn is gone, and they lose a lot off of that secondary. So if Chandler Morris and company can get things going, the rematch of the Big 12 title game might be going TCU's way, but I think TCU lost too many big contributors. I think this Kansas State team will be very physical defensively, and I think Kansas State's going to get the better of TCU in that game there. Kind of the same argument with Texas Tech here. That is a real contender in Lubbock. They got a lot of talented players offensively, defensively. It's an offensive scheme that works beautifully with Zach Kitley there as offensive coordinator. Joey McGuire with head coach has a real Big 12 contender in Lubbock. I love what the Texas Tech Red Raiders have this year. I'm very high on that team, and I think TCU is going to lose their second straight and third overall on the season with a loss to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. But I do think they get a nice bounce-back game here. Texas traveling on the road to play at TCU, it's a place where Texas has struggled in the past before, and it very well may be a place where they struggle this year. Now, Texas has a lot of talent in the pass game, but TCU, besides Travius Hodges Tomlinson leaving, there's a lot of talent in that secondary. I think TCU has what it takes to match up against that passing attack of Texas, be able to shut it down, and I think offensively, they're going to be able to score enough points to be able to walk away with a win over the Texas Longhorns in that game. I think Texas is a very good team this year. Definitely is an upset in my book, but I do believe TCU has what it takes to beat the Texas Longhorns, and they will do so in that game. And I do believe they will beat the Baylor Bears as well. Don't count the Bears out this year. This is going to be a bounce-back year for Dave Aranda and company. A lot of good pieces on defense. Blake Shapen does come back to be that quarterback for Baylor. It'll be a very nice season for the Baylor Bears in 2023. I just don't think they quite have what it takes to match up with TCU. I think TCU will make a couple plays late that'll help them seal this game against the Baylor Bears. And then on the road against Oklahoma. And while the Sooner defense does have to improve, hasn't really shown me much signs that it has. Offensively, this is a very, very talented team that I think will be able to take it to this TCU defense in pretty much every position, even with all the talent TCU does return at secondary. Dylan Gabriel is back. A lot of nice talent in the running back room. Wide receiver-wise, they're looking good as well. I think Oklahoma wins that game to bring TCU to 8-4. Not a terrible record by any means. There are a lot more games on the schedule they could lose. Texas, Baylor, maybe even Colorado. But I cannot see this team getting back to a national championship game. Maybe another Big 12 title game. Sure, that's absolutely possible. But another college football playoff run, well, you might need the slipper to fit once again this year. But that's going to do it for my thoughts on TCU. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.